Across every era of farming and survival, from the wartime victory gardens to the quiet allotments that fed families during shortages, the difference between a good harvest and a failed one came down to habits. Not the weather, not the seed variety. Habits, the consistent decisions, good or bad, that shaped the entire growing season. History is full of examples. Soldiers in World War I, trenches who grew crops in shell-scarred mud, Depression-era families scraping food out of backyard soil, and early homesteaders who relied on their gardens the way modern households rely on electricity. When you read their stories, a pattern becomes clear. Most failures happened because of preventable mistakes. Simple oversights that weakened the soil, stressed plants, or allowed small problems to grow into disasters. The truth is that modern growers repeat many of those same errors without realizing it. And in an age where people want more independence and reliable food sources, avoiding these mistakes can mean the difference between a thriving garden and a disappointing season. So let's go straight into the 5 biggest mistakes that quietly ruin harvests every year, and how to fix them with the same principles that kept earlier generations alive. Mistake 1 begins when people plant without understanding their soil. Throughout history, the most successful farmers were those who treated soil like a living system. The worst failures came from treating it like an inert surface. Today, the same issue continues when growers plant into ground that is too compacted, too acidic, too depleted, or too dry to support strong crops. A plant may sprout, but it cannot thrive in soil that suffocates roots or locks nutrients away. A practical solution is to perform a simple soil test using basic tools such as vinegar baking soda and a water jar soil separation test. Even early settlers carried ways of checking soil texture by hand, feeling whether it formed a ribbon or fell apart, revealing clay or sand dominance. Once you know what type of soil you have, you can correct it. Clay needs organic matter and root-driven aeration. Sandy soil, well, it needs compost to hold moisture. And if your soil is depleted, you'll want nitrogen-rich inputs like composted manure or maybe legume cover crops. By fixing the soil first, everything planted afterward has a fighting chance. Mistake 2 happens when growers water incorrectly, either too much or too little. Poor watering has destroyed more gardens than insects, droughts, or bad seed. Well, you know, historical accounts from frontier farms show that careless watering created weak, shallow-rooted plants that collapsed at the first sign of heat or dryness. Overwatering leaves soil waterlogged and airless, causing roots to rot. Underwatering, on the other hand, forces plants to shut down and abandon fruiting. The correct approach, really, is slow, deep watering that trains roots to grow downward. A simple and effective method is to water once, wait about 10 minutes, and then water again. This double soak ensures the moisture actually penetrates rather than just running off the surface. Mulch is also essential, you know. During the war, gardeners would use straw leaves and, well, even torn cloth to help hold moisture in the soil. You know, you can apply a similar layer today to keep your soil cool and stable. The goal isn't really about frequent watering, but rather maintaining consistent moisture, which honestly encourages those resilient root systems we're after. Mistake number 3. Now, that's when people overcrowd their plants, and without realizing it, create a sort of silent competition. You know, modern growers often underestimate just how vicious root competition can be. When plants are spaced too closely, their roots clash underground, stealing water and nutrients from one another. Above ground, crowded leaves block airflow, and that, well, creates the perfect environment for mildew, fungal infections, and insect attacks. Historical wartime garden manuals, they spent entire pages warning against overcrowding because, honestly, food production depended on every plant reaching full maturity. To correct this, spacing must follow what the plant truly needs, not what the grower wishes would fit. A practical way to apply this is to plant fewer seeds per bed, but prepare the soil deeply so each plant has a strong root zone. For example, thinning seedlings early may feel wasteful, but it results in healthier crops that actually produce. You know, the harvest you lose by thinning is far smaller than the harvest you lose by overcrowding. It's a bit counterintuitive at first, but it's true. Mistake number 4 emerges when growers ignore pests and diseases until they become overwhelming. It's easy to hope they'll just go away, but, well, that's rarely the case. One of the hard lessons learned during the First and Second World War ration garden campaigns was that pests are not a side issue. They are an existential threat. It's something gardeners had to take seriously or risk losing everything. When we ignore those early signs, chewed leaves, discoloured spots, drooping branches, well, we're just giving pests time to multiply. By the time the damage becomes obvious, it's often too late, you know. The historical solution, really, was constant monitoring and early intervention. That's how gardeners used to keep things in check. Today, the same rule still applies. You don't need chemicals to stay ahead of pests. What you truly need is vigilance. So, you know, it's important to inspect your crops every few days. Don't forget to look under leaves and, check stems for tiny clusters of eggs. And if you spot any diseased foliage, remove it immediately. You might want to introduce natural solutions like neem oil, or perhaps wood ash barriers, or even soap water sprays, while the problem is still small. Growers who intervene early, well, they save entire harvests with minimal effort because they prevent those boom and collapse cycles that can absolutely devastate gardens. Mistake 5 happens when people rely on fertilizer instead of building long-term soil health. Throughout history, the biggest agricultural collapses came when people consumed the fertility of the land faster than they could replace it. Modern synthetic fertilizers repeat this pattern by providing quick bursts of growth without improving soil structure, microbial life, or long-term nutrient cycling. You know, plants may grow quickly when given synthetic fertilizers, but they often end up weak and, well, rather dependent on those inputs. The real solution, honestly, is to build fertility just as earlier generations did. Composting kitchen scraps, using cover crops, adding manure, mulching heavily and leaving roots in the soil after harvest, all of these practices create a cycle where, season after season, the fertility of the soil just keeps getting better. So, a practical method is to add organic matter at the end of each harvest, cover the bed, and then just let it break down through the dry season. When you come back, you'll notice the soil is darker, more crumbly, and honestly more productive than it was before. This is really how you grow harvests that improve year after year. If this guide helped you spot the mistakes holding your harvest back and gave you, some historically tested ways to fix them, make sure you subscribe to FarmLab. Go ahead and share this with someone who wants stronger yields, healthier soil, and a deeper understanding of real practical gardening that, well, never goes out of style.